Eddie Turner. This is the New Hope Cemetery, and I was born and raised up here, and I left here in the early '60s, and we went to Amarillo, and we decided to move back to the farm, so we're back. We've been back about 5 years. Now this cemetery where we're standing now, this cemetery has been here since the early to mid 1800s, and some of the headstones here can verify that. My brother here, Gene, he and a cousin of ours, Huey Mitchell, they took over the cemetery project about how many years ago?
2005.
They took over the cemetery project in 2005, and when they stepped in, this cemetery was totally overgrown, and it just, you wouldn't believe it, the way it looked now. They took over, and they raised funds to get it clean, and they've been keeping it up, and since I moved back, I've joined in with them, and this is what we're doing. We're spending our time, some of our time here, trying to keep the cemetery like it should be. So that's basically what I have. What do you have, brother?
I'm Gene Turner. Huey Mitchell and I started this project December 26, 2005. The cemetery, you could not recognize it because it was so overgrown. So we started working here day by day. We got it cleaned up somewhat, and after that we had a fence put around it, and then we got a crew that would help us keep it in better condition than it was when we started. And now we are now in January 2016, and you can see the results of what we've done so far. And as Eddie said, it's over 100 years old. Where we're standing now is the old part of the cemetery. You don't see very many headstones, but if you pan around, you see a lot of empty space. But there are people buried in this empty space. But back in the day, people, due to economics, they didn't have the money for headstones, so what they would plant a tree, or plant a rose, or place rocks for the headstone. And over the years, those rocks has been displaced, those roses have died and the trees have died, so this is actually full, but it doesn't look like it. So that's where we are with this part of the cemetery, and later on we'll move to the newer part.
Now we can move down. Some of the headstones will reflect I think this here has a real old date, but I can't tell what it is.
And you can, as we were saying, you see very few headstones, but at the one you see there, 1861, 1880s, 1870s.
Yeah, here's one 1861 here. What is that one? 1870. I think that's one of the old ones, but I can't make it out. That one's 1893. Yeah. Oh, that was 1880 there.
Yeah, that's A. Fagan.
That's gas then.
Yeah, that's just the footstone for that headstone.
Yeah.
This is a grave, one I was telling you about earlier, when they didn't put down headstone, just rocks.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the indentation in the earth indicating that that is a grave.
Wow.
And if you come down this way, you'll see the same thing here. More indentation indicating that there were graves.
Wow.
When we started this project, you can see these big trees here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the time, the overgrowth was about right here. So we had to start here and work back to the fence. And at that time, that's when we discovered this was a grave right here that nobody knew was here. We discovered that stone. There's more indentations here showing where there was graves, but no stones or anything. Like I said, this is full of people, but we have no way of telling you who they are.
And some of these are military. I think that's the military one right there. I'm not sure, but I think it is.
I'm Deacon W.T. Turner of the New Hope Missionary Baptist Church, and we're here today identifying this is my uncle, Reverend Robert Eddie Turner, my dad's brother, and his wife, my aunt, Aunt Johnny Turner Davis. They were here in this community for years, and they had several children, which all are deceased now except for one, and that's Miss Burley May Fields. And over here we have Lorenza Turner and Pauline Turner Wingo and their children. They were killed in a car wreck, automobile accident at Gum Creek. And all of the family of these are deceased now. There's no brothers, sisters in this family left. Okay. This is Ron Lewis Turner, son. Paulette Turner, daughter. Roger Lynn Turner, that's a son. Lorenza Turner Jr. Pauline Turner. And Lorenza Turner. These all passed June 20th, April the 5th, 1957. This is Essie Lee Davis, a relative. Ola Mae Davis, these are relatives. Otis William Turner, that is the son of Uncle Robert and Aunt Johnny. Ella Mae Turner, that is one of the daughters. Okay. Of my father, Mr. Wash Turner, Deacon Wash Turner, deacon of the New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. This is my mother, Miss Marty Irene Turner, member of the New Hope Baptist Church, deaconess, who worked faithful in this church in order to keep this cemetery going. This cemetery was the last one purchased. This cemetery was purchased from Mr. Arch Maddock. Mr. Maddock owned several hundred acres of land in here, and he sold this to Mr. Woodson, Jesse Woodson, who lived in that house on the corner down there. And we purchased this cemetery, the church purchased this cemetery. The old cemetery had become full. No one could be buried there any longer. And that cemetery was purchased in the year of 1873, and by some old slaves, Johnny Cobb Marshall Jr., and they went together and decided that they would buy a place and build a church, which this church was located at one time on the Shellworth place, which is east of here. And then it the deacons got together and purchased this place where it is located now from Mr. and Mrs. Esau Davis. And my dad worked as deacon, several other deacons, Gus Davis and Esau Davis, uh, Lieutenant Howard, Robert Louis Fields, and Andrew Wright. They all come together and purchased this cemetery. At one time, it was people were buried before we purchased the cemetery, the old cemetery. People were buried over at the Greer Cemetery, which is about 2 miles east of here. And the last person that was buried over there of our relatives was Uncle Sam Jeffrey. And then we started burying here. They started burying here. And this has been a ongoing struggling, trying to maintain this cemetery, and all the ministers that come here and work with us worked hard trying to keep this cemetery up. Our present pastor now is Keith D. Covington, and he is working with us in order to maintain this cemetery. Reverend A.W. Wright was one of the pastors here at one time, and he worked hard with the deacons trying to keep this cemetery going.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Good morning. My name is Huey Mitchell, and I was born here in Upshur County and moved to California in 1941 and returned back in 2001. And Gene Turner and I started working on this in December the 26th, 2005. And there was no fence, there was weeds growing up, there was trees. There were one area where an old cedar had fell, and around that cedar everybody had started dumping wood and all kinds of trash. They were using it as a dump. And so we took care of that. Then, as I go back and a little bit more history, my mother's sister, Minnie Hale, is buried right here. And on the left side of her is her granddaughter, Dorothea Evans. At the foot of her grave is Lester V. Hale, better known around as Cattail. And next to Lester is Arthur Gene Hale, who passed away in October last year. Cattail was brought back from California to be buried here. My Aunt Minnie, she was brought back from Kansas to be buried here. And Dorothea died. She died in Dallas area, and then she was brought back up here to be buried. And so those are my family members that was buried here. My grandparents are buried over on the other side of the cemetery, and my great-grandmother is buried over there. But the cemetery now is getting to be pretty attractive, and as we started off with a little bit more of a history, when Gene Turner and I took over doing the cemetery, we were given a bank account of $8.65. And since that time, we've been able to do various programs and fundraisers. We now have roughly $11,000 in reserve in order to continue to maintain the cemetery. As individuals and we age, we're not able to do as much of the labor that we did in the past. So now we're going to have to hire some of that out and get other people to do the work. Locally, we get some support, but not very much. The church is donate money to us monthly. It's not a great deal, but it helps. And we've had people from various parts of the United States that have family members buried here, and they do contribute occasionally. And so right now we're setting on pretty solid ground. We had no rules or any kind of regulation as how people could be buried, what they could be done when we came in. And so we set up the bylaws for the cemetery, and there were so many unmarked graves, and at this point we now have a policy where once you put a grave site and someone is buried, we will go and purchase a grave marker if the individual choose not to put a headstone, or if the individual wants to put a headstone in, they have to within 60 days notify, 90 days to notify us, and at that point we will return what they have put down for purchasing a grave marker. And that pretty much covers everything that we've been involved in. So I don't know many of the people other than the close family members that are buried here. I don't have the history since I was not raised here. You know, WT has a lot of history, and I'm sure he's filled you in on the history that he is aware of.
Thank you.